Ellen Brockovich claims this is what's at stake in November. Every day I get emails from people asking for help, and they think I'm a lawyer. I'm not, she says. They want to know what caused their career or why their farm has tested high for chemicals they've never heard of, and they want someone to fight for them. The recent Supreme Court decision overturning the 40-year-old Chevron precedent, which allowed federal agencies to integrate the laws they oversee, to interpret them, should wake us up to how truly alone we are when it comes to environmental health protections. If Donald Trump wins in November, she says she believes things could get from bad to worse. Progress to protect Americans from dangerous chemicals could reach a standstill, she says. This is what her opinion is. And she says I could list dozens, if not thousands, of commitments we come in contact with and contaminants, some regulated by federal or state agencies, others not. I'll focus on per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, a class of thousands of synthetic chemicals that are finally being recognized for the damage that they cause. PFAS are known as forever chemicals because they persist in the environment and in human bodies for decades. These chemicals have been used in order to make common items, from textiles to adhesives to food packaging to firefighting foams to non-stick cookware, which we all use, especially the non-stick cookware. Now, the health problems associated with exposure to PFAS include fertility issues, developmental delays in children, an increased risk of certain cancers, and of obesity, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. Scientists have detected PFAS chemicals in the blood of almost all Americans, and that would go by extension to all Westerners. Now, what's frustrating is that we've known for decades which industries use these chemicals, and we've known they are accumulating in the environment, but companies and our the agencies delayed action. So just take one example. From the 1950s through the 1970s, 3M dumped its PFAS waste into pits around Minnesota's eastern Twin Cities metro area. That led to more than 150 square mile plume of contaminated groundwater. Subsequent testing revealed that by 2004, more than 140,000 Minnesotans had tainted drinking water, and years later, a young woman named Amora Strand grew up near the plume. In 2023, Ms. Strand testified in front of Minnesota lawmakers in support of legislation that would restrict PFAS, which she believed caused her rare form of liver cancer. She died weeks before legislation known as America's Law banned the use of PFAS in Minnesota. She was only 20 years old, and there are more cases just like hers. The number of U.S. communities reportedly contaminated with PFAS compounds continues to grow. Last year, one or more types of PFAS were detected in almost half of the nation's tap water. People like to talk about the risks of federal oversight and regulations, but without those basic guardrails in place, large companies get to do whatever they want, and hardworking Americans end up getting sick. Some such needed action was taken on PFAS at the national level recently. In April, the EPA mandated that municipal water systems remove 6 PFAS chemicals from tap water. Such efforts are now at risk. Under the Supreme Court's recent Chevron ruling, federal judges get the final say on how laws, including the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act, should be applied. This weakens the ability of regulatory agencies to do their jobs protecting the public's health from problems such as PFAS. Future pollution cases could meander through the federal court system for years while drinking water remains contaminated. and whatever that means to people using it. Now, companies will take advantage of this ruling. Water, utility, and chemical manufacturing companies have filed challenges with the EPA, calling the rule arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion. And now imagine you take these knee-capped regulatories and regulations and put them with the second Trump presidency. President Trump railed back decades of clean water protection and dozens of environmental rules. She says the EPA is still reeling from the exodus of more than 1,200 scientists and policy experts during his administration. One of his political appointees meddled with PFAS assessments, weakening the toxicity value of a chemical. The EPA already has its problems, but the agency fared even worse under Trump. He repeatedly tried to slash the EPA's budget, and many staff members fled. Meanwhile, fewer inspectors, fewer resources to study the impact of toxins, and more companies contravening environmental regulations. I recently, she says, reviewed Project 2025, a playbook for the first 180 days of the potential next Trump administration. Donald Trump says he doesn't support the project, though many of his former White House employees are involved. In the EPA chapter, PFAS are mentioned twice. Project 2025 says the administration should revise groundwater cleanup regulations and policies to reflect the challenges of contaminants such as PFAS, the forever chemicals, which seems fair, but then it also says that as hazardous substances, quote unquote, under the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, CERCLA for short, also known as Superfund. That seems contradictory and ill-advisory. The designation ensuring that the polluters, not taxpayers, fund or conduct investigations and cleanup. And she says, I'm not giving Democratic administration a pass. We need more accountability for the environmental ills that have passed under their watch too. These include the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, and Jackson, Mississippi, the state that federal responses to the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, left much to be desired. We must expect more from these, and those we put in office, our lives depend on it, she says. The EPA used to have bipartisan support. The Reagan administration changed that when President Ronald Reagan appointed a corporation-friendly EPA administrator who ruled against governmental regulation. Rules are effective only if they can be enforced. State and federal agencies have done a poor job of building meaningful enforcement into the well-intentioned regulations that have been enacted, and they must do better. Americans' health is at risk. This is originally from the New York Times. It's on DNYUZ. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.